Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Sean Ray, and I have the special guest of today, Mr. Mark. He's been the guy that we've been talking about for a long time on this channel. Ever since I posted the worst guest video, then everyone's been asking me about what is up with this camera surveillance system that you have. How can I get my hands on it, and then what's the information on it? So today, we're going to be going over with the guy that convinced me to get it. I used to use Arlo cameras, and I was sold on Arlo cameras until he's like, you are missing the boat. You need to switch over to this DVR system that I have. And I finally trusted him because he's the expert. Always ask the experts. Listen to their opinions whenever they talk to you and they try to help you. And he got me over this DVR thing, and it's been a lifesaver. I've been using it every single time. I'm going to go over a couple of stories in this video, but without further ado, Mr. Mark, can you please introduce yourself and why it's so important for people to listen to you, especially if you're in the Texas area, about the surveillance system that you hooked me up with.
Yeah, so thank you. My name is Mark Wedden. I'm the owner of Foresight Security. Been doing security for 10 years now. We service the state of Texas, so anywhere in Texas. Except for El Paso, it's a little far away. Those guys can fend for themselves out there. But we go Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Lubbock, most major cities inside Texas. Yeah, cameras, I highly recommend Hardwire Cameras. We talked for a little while about cameras, went back and forth, even installed a couple of wireless systems for you that I didn't recommend. Had problems, like I said we would. And Wi-Fi was never really designed to go on the outside of houses. It was supposed to stay inside. The more physical barriers you have in between your router and especially a video device, which is one of the most highest devices that take up the most bandwidth, if it's outside and it has to travel through brick and insulation and metal, Wi-Fi devices are always going to struggle. When we did Wi-Fi cameras, we got lots of calls all the time about it, so that's one of the reasons why we, years ago, switched to doing Hardwire cameras. It's just a better device. It's just a better camera, a lot more reliable, and a higher quality image as well. So.
Another thing I want to talk about, what I used to have to deal with is I used to always have to convince my guests through fines or fees or constantly messaging and things like that. I had to always have to deal with them just removing the router. Like they would just turn the router off or just unplug. They could figure out where the Arlo or the wireless thing is. And they just go to the router and they find, okay, and then now my cameras are off. With the DVR system that he set me up with, now the cameras, the wire goes straight up into the attic and they hardwire it into the attic. And that way, unless the people get a ladder and come up and snip the cameras or go into the attic and find it, then I don't have to deal with those issues anymore. And it so far hasn't been an issue. It used to be an issue all the time. By the way, sorry if I get you sick. I'm a little stuffed up right now. If you guys are watching this in the future, we're dealing with the coronavirus right now in Dallas, so I'm fine though. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I want to also put a disclaimer that in this video, or just like any other videos that I have, if I suggest to you Derek the lender or my CPA, JR, or him, I don't get kickbacks at all. And so if you, at the end of this video, want to use his video camera surveillance system on any of your houses, I've tried to get him to discount his rates, and I try to get him to get me a free deal, but he just doesn't do it. He's a good buddy of mine from high school, but still, I don't get any discounts. So if you guys go through him, at the end of the video, he'll tell you how to contact him, but this is not a sales ad. Like, this is just information for you guys. Hopefully you can take it. So let's get into the real life scenario. And so what happened as soon as he installed it on the big house, the party house, if you guys want, there's going to be a little card right above, and it's going to be a walkthrough of the house. And you guys can see the inside of the house. But as soon as I installed it on the house, then that's whenever I had the worst guest. And so if you guys want to watch that worst guest video, the card will be up here as well.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a fun video. I had rappers come in and they literally partied until they broke the floor. And the floor cracked. And then if I didn't have the camera footage, then I would have not got any of that compensated. And it was just like the deal of the lifetime, because I got $15,000 at the end of that video. Spoiler alert, if you watch that video, the climax of that video is the fact that I got $15,000, but it was only due to the camera surveillance. Like, it was 100% due to that. The guest didn't admit to any fault. There was no kind of claims that we can do. We can't say that it was a previous guest or a guest after. We had to have pictures. And the fact that we had a ton of pictures and we had video surveillance was 100% the reason why I got paid that 15 grand. So whatever the price he quotes you at the end of this video, that was paid in full many, many, many times over by that one guest. And since then, just like last week, I did a pricing strategy where there's a video on Airbnb Automated. If you guys want to check it out, it's a pricing strategy video that you take a day far out in the future and you drop the price down dramatically. And so I do about $299 a night on the weekdays for the big house, and then I do like $700 a night or $600 a night depending on the day on the weekends for the big house. So I did way out in the future. I dropped it down to $70 a night. And that way out in the future was last week. And so I just forgot to change the price. So I had a last minute booking at like 12 a.m. These people came in and they just threw a massive rager on a Monday and pissed off my neighbor. And then he was telling me about them like using their car, like they opened their car doors at like 3 a.m. and turned the rap music as high up as possible. And they were running around outside drunk and they're yelling and screaming. And they got in a fight and they set off car alarms. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, why is this happening? I saw that it was because I didn't adjust my pricing strategy. It just brought a different kind of clientele in. And that's what happens whenever you drop your pricing that far low, that amount of discount. But because of his camera situation, I was able to go out and show pictures and stuff like that. And now I was able to get a fine sent to the guest, and Airbnb covered the fine through an Airbnb resolution because of that. And then I actually just sent that over to my neighbor. But if it weren't for the camera, then I couldn't have ever had any of my case covered. Situation, I don't know if I told you about this, but I have another video if you guys want to check it out, but horror stories on Airbnb. I had a church group come and they said they're going to bring just like 5 or 10 people. And they ended up bringing like 30, 40 kids, or like 50 kids, something like that. And then there was just like a massive amount of like kids running around, teenagers, and they just trashed my house. And it was only because of the camera that I was able to protect myself. So cameras are important, and so exactly the camera that we're going to talk about today, he's going to go over the exact code and then why it's important to have this particular set, some other options, and how much it costs.
The cameras we use are LTS brand cameras. They're very affordable for anybody. Hardwired cameras, they're not Wi-Fi cameras. That's the important part, like we were talking about earlier. Wi-Fi cameras, when you get a Wi-Fi camera, you're paying for the wirelessness of the camera, not the quality of the image. So the money that goes into developing a Wi-Fi device goes into making it wireless as opposed to giving you a higher quality picture. So when you get a hardwired camera, we actually run a wire all the way from the camera back to the DVR system. That's, as far as signal transmission, very, very cheap to do because it all goes through the wire. All the money that goes in developing that camera device goes into making it a hardwired, higher quality picture. So that's the cameras we use, and that's why they're better. There's no Wi-Fi issues, no Wi-Fi connectivity. Wi-Fi doesn't drop out when you need it. I was just talking to a homeowner the other day. They talked to me about how they had cameras. They had 2 break-ins, and when they had those break-ins, both times their Wi-Fi cameras, the Wi-Fi dipped out, and there was no recording. They didn't have anything, no record of the break-in at all.
Okay, so I personally recommend everyone on this channel do 3 camera system. And so one for the front to watch like whenever guests come in and pull up their car, and then kind of like watching the driveway as well. I mean, unless you're doing rental arbitrage, which is a different situation. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But that way you get to watch the cars if any kind of break-ins happen. And then also you get to see how many people are coming in the front door or if there's a fight, which also another thing is that it's good to have the front because you get to see when the cops show up, and then you can show Airbnb, hey, the cops, there was 2 cop cars, 3 cop cars. This guy got arrested, which that's happened. And so you can use that as evidence too. Then you have one on the inside, just like on the top corner of your living room, that looks all through the living room and probably into your kitchen as well. That way you can do a head count if there is a party or if there is a DJ that shows up, and that's probably where they're going to put it. And you can just do like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 70 people in my place. What the hell? And so you can screenshot it and you can send it to Airbnb. And so that's a really good one as well. Plus, it's not in anyone's living room or living area as far as sleeping. I'm sorry. And so that's the thing that Airbnb has an issue with and guests have an issue with is if you have any beds in the living room, which if you do like a pull-out couch or if you do like a Murphy bed situation, that's where it gets kind of dicey, but you just let them know in the comment or in the guide of the house that there will be cameras in common spaces, not in bedrooms or bathrooms. And then before you book, you need to make sure that you specify that you're okay with this. And so living room, top corner, looking into the living room, into the kitchen. And lastly, backyard, top of the house, looking through the entire backyard. Because you can have 50 people in your living room, and then you're like, okay, I got them. But then if you double check the same timestamp, and you go to the outside, there's another 50 people outside, and you're like, oh my God, overall there's 50 people, and no wonder my neighbors hate me. And so top corner in the backyard as well. And so those are the top three. Each different house is going to have different requirements. You might need a fourth one, depending on the house. But for 3 cameras with this LTS. Man, I'm not the pro. This is why we brought the pro. So for 3 camera system for you to install with the DVR, how much does that cost?
So most homes, we charge $250 per camera, and then another $250 for the DVR. It depends if there's any special wiring. Every home is different, so if we're talking 2-story houses, it could be a little extra. Sometimes it's not. It just totally depends on the layout of the house, the size of the house, how much attic space there is. That's really what it depends on, is how much, because we got to run wires, right, from where the camera is back to wherever we put the DVR, and there's got to be a decent path to get there. If there's not, they can usually do it, but it could require conduit, it could require a few things, it could be some extra charges. Most homes, it's flat rate that we do, $250 per camera, $250 for the DVR.
One thing for you to also keep in mind, if you're doing what I recommend when buying the houses and flipping it for Airbnb, the one that we had an issue with on one of the houses that I have is the big house that we keep on referencing, is that it was actually a 1-story house that they added a second floor to, and then they couldn't figure out a way to like get it to the attic, so we had to run it on the outside and come back in. So just keep in mind, if you're having these homes that were initially built as 1 bedrooms, they have now 2 bedrooms. If they come back and say, hey, we're having issues with it, don't be surprised. You did it to yourself when you bought a house. I did it to myself when I bought a house that was renovated for 2 stories when it was at 1 story.
And we're pretty good at being upfront about it. We're good at creating conversation and figuring out what we're working with before we come in, and letting you know what the expectation will be once we get there. Hey, we'll have some questions before we send someone out. Hey, this might be what it's going to look like based on what you told me. And everyone that we work with has a pretty good idea before we get there what it's going to look like. And when we get there too, we can always add, you're right about we usually do about 3 to 4 cameras for most homes, entry points, and then we want to see out to where the cars are. Those are the most popular places, and some people want to see some extra things, so about 3 or 4 cameras is standard for most of these systems.
Cool. So I have an issue with having noise. It's been pissing my neighbors off. I've done my best to try to modify all my parameters on my listings to make it less appealing for large parties. I like big events, but I don't like large parties, because big events, they're a big amount of people during the day and they taper off at night, which is fine. Whereas parties, they're small during the day and they taper bigger as it goes on throughout the night. 4 a.m., they're still yelling and screaming in my backyard. I'm like, guys, I have neighbors. What's wrong with you? Who raised you?
I can't imagine having a party where the floor got broken.
Yeah, it was wild. Watch that video. I know you only watched half of it, but watch the rest of that worst Airbnb guest video. It's ridiculous. Especially that was just an appetizer what actually happened. Like there's a whole lot more that went on. But yeah, that was wild. So how do I use your cameras to also monitor sound? Is there a way that your system can hear voices, or like can you, because I know on some of them you can like have a, hey you, stop doing that. Like you can, like on my old cameras I can record and like scare people when they're trying to like walk through the house. I'm like, I see you, stop doing that. I see you smoking, I'm gonna charge you. Can you do that through these cameras, or can you hear voices, or can you hear noise?
So we can install microphones on these cameras. It doesn't come with it. It would be a little bit extra to do that. The LTS cameras don't have two-way voice capability. So any Hardwire DVR cameras, they don't do two-way voice. That's what you get when you get the Wi-Fi cameras. A lot of those do that, but then the reliability is not there with those cameras is the issue. So there's ways to do it. We can always figure something out like that if you want to be able to communicate with people in the house. What I don't know is the legality of Airbnb. If you can have mics, that's a question for you. Would Airbnb allow you to have a mic in the house? I'm
the Airbnb investing guy, but if you guys want to hear more about like the detailed behind the scenes Airbnb rules and regulations, I think a lot of you guys that are watching this video know about Sean Rockagich. Go check out his page at Airbnb Automated, and he goes through all sorts of different ins and outs, legalities of surveillance and spying on your guests. He has one video he just posted about, he just put out his link for its Minute, I think it's Minute, whatever. And I'm thinking about getting some as well through him. But it's like $130, but if you use his discount code Sean25, which you can have on that link on his video, then you get it for like $100. And basically it's a heat, moisture, noise, volume, all in one kind of sensor system. And it sends you notifications if it gets above a certain decibel level, and then that way you'll be chilling doing your thing, and then all of a sudden you get an alert and say, this property that you have is getting a little out of control, so make sure to call them or notify the guest, and then you have like a response team go out there.
And that's when you pick up your phone, because cameras have an app on the phone, right? So you can pick up your phone, check your cameras to see what's going on right then, right when you get a notification from your app for the noise, pick up your camera, see what's going on in the house, and that's what you did, I think.
Solid point is that you can take a screenshot that, like, say for instance, 1:02 a.m. and you do a screenshot of the noise alert on your minute system that you get through Sean Rakajic, and then you also do the same time, like he said, flip over your cameras and do the same timestamp as well, and that way you can send them both to Airbnb. And when you have that much evidence, Airbnb resolution really does take care of you. I mean, they try their best to be like, but if you have pictures, timestamps, and you have messaging centers of you messaging the guest, then you're going to be taken care of. So, yeah, man, is there anything that you have else for me before we send off?
We also do alarm systems too. So that some of these systems that we've done, we do the alarm. So we'll offer massive discounts on the cameras for people that we also hook up alarm systems for. Alarm system, having an alarm in an Airbnb house is not always ideal, but it does have a lot of home automation features like smart door locks where you can remotely change the door lock code. There's one Airbnb house that we did that's got about 5 different door locks throughout the house, one door lock on each guest bedroom door, and he can change the code for each door for each guest remotely without having to go do it from an app on his phone. So there's options that we can include the price of the cameras in a monthly service rate for the alarm, where it includes those home automation, the door lock features as well. We can be flexible.
So that's a really good deal if you guys are doing individual room listings. I'm trying to automate my life as much as possible, and then I send it over to a property manager to do it as well. Josh, you guys probably know through this channel. And it's just easy to do one code throughout the entire house, and you just change that code. If you want to do individual rooms and individual listing, it's just so much more of a headache. But people do that, and if that's something that you want to do, having that ability is a life changer. Like just being able to do that versus having to go in and manually get the code and then like get the, all right, and then, okay, got it, and then change the code, and then do the serial number again. Okay, good. Instead of doing that, you just go to your phone and do that. And that would be really convenient. When we first started working together on the first 2 houses I did have the alarm set up, and I had all the bells and whistles, and it instead of increasing the security of the house, it just made it more complicated. Guests started setting off the alarms a lot because they didn't know the code. One guest knew the code, but the other guests didn't know the code, and then we had certain people messaging me what the code was, and I was like, tell the person, I told you the code, it's in the listing, it's in the checking, and it just went back and forth, and I was like, okay, screw it, I can't do this anymore, because it just makes it more complicated than it
Clearly
needs to
not
be.
for every situation.
Yeah, but whenever you're doing this situation you're talking about, individual listings, it is a good idea. But, all right, man, well, where can people find you?
So we have a website, foresightsecure.com. There's a little spot if you're interested. You can go online, foresightsecure.com, punch in your information, and that'll get a hold of us, and we'll reach out.
Mm-hmm. And if you guys want to check out his Instagram, he posts just bikini pictures of himself all the time. He's always in Speedos. If you guys want to see this guy only in Speedos in every single situation possible, what's your Instagram?
It's private, Sean.
At Mark Macho, the Speedo Man. It's at Mark Macho, the Speedo Man.
Check it out. I'm going to create that now.
It's not true. All right, man.
It will be, though.
Thanks for stopping by. And we're getting 2 more houses. Yeah, this month we're getting 2 more houses. Anthony's buying a house. Stay tuned for those videos. We're going to be doing a walkthrough of him in the buying process, and also I'm going to be buying a house this month too. And so he will be at those properties installing those cameras, so you might see him in some of those videos. So cool. All right.
Thanks, Sean.
See you, man. Achoo!